welcome to the Stockboy Gaming channel. We're going drifting today in the best tuner cars in GTA Online. I love realistic things on my channel, so yeah, there are some drift cars out there. Maybe you could call them drift cars. They're fun, but they're not as fun as these in my opinion because, well, I like things to be realistic, and I hate to break it to you, if this is how you're setting up your drift car in real life, you're not doing it right. First up, we got number 4 on the list with the Dominator GTT. And as each of these are starting off, I'll show you the setup on the screen. They're just like that, so you can try it out just the same way that I've done it here. What I'm looking for is cars that can go around this track in a continuous drift, chaining drifts together, basically making it through the entire thing in a drift. So you'll see some pretty awesome footage here, video-wise, but also I want to tell you kind of how the car handles so you can get an idea of if it's going to work for you or not. My top 3, top 4 may not be the same for you. This Dominator GTT barely missed my top 3. It's actually really good once you get used to driving it a little bit, and especially after I started driving my number 1 car more often, or drifting it, this became a lot easier to drive as well. It slides really easily, and you can power over a little bit, meaning just get on the accelerator. It'll break traction. It's a little harder to keep the momentum going through the longer corners and on the straightaways with this GTT than it is with the rest of the cars on the list. That's why I put it down on my number 4, but you can have a ton of fun with it. It's a great looking car. It's really, really awesome to drive, and it slides pretty easily once you take that spoiler off. That's the key. You can't do this with the spoiler on. As you'll see, I struggle a little bit getting it to go through these final corners here. This last section of the car meet test track definitely proved to be the most difficult. Getting around this long, tight corner requires some speed and control. It actually handles that pretty well. This car overall is really good, and I'm really glad I did this because I have a new car that I love to drift in. Moving on to number 3, and this one maybe you'll expect to be a little bit higher, but we've got the Fudo GTX down in the 3 spot, and I'll explain why, of course. Don't get too angry yet. Like I said, maybe this car is a little better for you to drift in than it was for me. My biggest issue, as you'll see here already, it struggles a little bit through those longer corners. It's just a little bit down on power, which makes sense considering what it is, but you can carry a ton of speed through corners, and it's really easy to drift. It's not the easiest car to drift in GTA, but it's up there. You can pretty much, for the most part, just mash the accelerator and turn, and it'll do what you want it to do. Right there, I almost take it too far, but I'm able to control it, bring it back in, dial it in and get around that hairpin there. It's really pretty forgiving, and it's a drifter. It's absolutely a drifter. You put those low grip tires on it, and it just wants to go sideways, which is exactly what you want. Drift cars are made to drift. That's why this is a drifting video full of the best drift cars, because they actually drift. And you see there, it gets stuck in lower gears sometimes, and with some of these underpowered cars that can be a problem, so it breaks the drift up a little bit. You can't control your gear selection in GTA, which is kind of a bummer, but you can still get some good drifts going, and here you see that drift breaks up quite a bit. That's a really long corner, a 270-degree corner before the final section. Doesn't quite have enough power to power through it, and you'll see here, I cut this corner a little bit because I'm just trying to keep that speed up so that I can get through the final corner as well. It doesn't handle those longer corners quite as well as the next 2 that you'll see on this list, and that's why it ends up in the bottom 3. But don't make any mistakes about it. That is a really good drift car. Not as good as this one though. This is the Warner HKR, and this is one of my absolute favorite tuners. You've probably seen videos of people drifting this car, and it is just so easy. Mash the accelerator, turn, and it's going to start sliding. Just like the Fudo GTX and the Dominator GTT before it, you have to keep the spoiler off if you want to do some of these long chain drifts, but it's totally worth it, and it's just so much fun to do in this car. You get some awesome angles. You actually can carry a decent amount of speed too, which I was surprised with. I haven't played around with this car really since it was released, so getting back into this and learning how to drift again, driving this was just so much more simple than the other cars. And when you're driving a drift car, You want it to slide, like I said with the Fudo GTX. That is what it's all about. You don't have real life drift cars that you have to do all sorts of goofy stuff with just to get them to go around corners. You're especially not going to be shooting at your wheels. But if you're new to this, if you're new to drifting in GTA, it can be a little bit strange. You don't really get the feedback that you may want from your controller, especially, or I guess on an Xbox is where I have experience with it. So that's what I'll say. On the Xbox, you don't get much feedback. You don't need it with this car. It just slides. It's so easy, so simple. In free mode on this track, it doesn't matter where you go. You can drift everywhere. It's so awesome and so much fun. And I was expecting this to be the #1 just based on my experience. There is a car that blows it away, but it's just one of these cars you absolutely have to have in your garage. It's so simple. I did this in one take. Very easy to get around the whole track. It's just absolutely an awesome little drifter. It's so much fun. It's unique. It's got everything that you need in a drift car. But there's an undisputed #1 in my opinion. There's nothing that even comes close to the RT3000 in GTA as far as drift cars go. This thing takes a little bit of practice. It takes a while to get used to, but you watch this in the video, it looks so natural. You can initiate a drift any way that you want as long as you're a little bit careful on your throttle. You'll see coming up here a little bit of a Scandinavian flick to throw it around that hairpin. It's great. It's so good for a drift car. I really wasn't expecting to find something this good. It's going to take practice. It's not easy like the others that you saw, and even the Dominator GTT can be a little challenging. This is very challenging, and it goes back to not getting a whole lot of feedback from the controller in GTA. It's hard to tell when you're at that breaking point, when you're going to spin in this thing. I actually got more luck turning my vibrations off on my controller and just kind of learning the car and what I could do in different places. So you could try that. But another awesome thing that you probably noticed already is this thing even drifts with the spoiler. You don't have to worry about the downforce slowing it down too much. And I actually preferred driving it with the spoiler. So looks-wise, it looks like a drift car, and it actually, in my opinion, improves its performance as a drift car, which is just great. It's really funny. The S2000 in real life is known for not being good at drifting at all. So it's ironic, in a way, a little weird, that this is probably the best, well, in my opinion, absolutely the best drifter in all of GTA. But it is just so good. You have to try it once you get comfortable drifting in GTA. There really is nothing like it. And even coming through this last little section, like I told you, it's hard to get something that'll go all the way through these corners, breaking traction the whole way, and this RT3000 is just so good. Thanks so much for joining today. If you're not already and you're still here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more Stockboy Gaming content in the future. Helps me out a lot. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What do you think of the video? What are your top 3 or 4? Thanks again, and I hope to see you next time.